We're making the overnights entertaining. Phil Hendry, 11 p.m. to 2 a.m. right here on NBC 1260.
And good morning to you. Welcome to Beyond the Curve, providing strategic insights on international business and international law. I'm Jeffrey O'Brien, alongside my co-host, Dr. Adriana Sanford. Let's introduce everybody. Dr. Adriana Sanford has 6 years of law school, including a double LLM in taxation and international comparative law from Georgetown University, a law degree from Notre Dame. She has 4 languages under her belt, including French and Spanish. She has represented numerous multinationals, serving both in-house and as external primary U.S. counsel. Good morning.
Good morning, Jeffrey.
All right, let's start off with international market entry. What is the first thing a company needs to think about before they enter into the international market?
Well, it depends, Jeffrey. It depends on whether or not that company has had any experience overseas. If the company is a small company and they're looking at doing something overseas, the first step is probably to take a look and see whether they want to go ahead and export. You can do that over the internet. It's the first step before you actually go in and present yourself in the country. Let's say if we're talking about a larger company, a company that's already exporting, they may want to consider a real presence. You can do a number of different things. You could set up a subsidiary, you can set up a joint venture, you can set up a distribution network. Depending on how much control you want to have, depending on the risks that you want to have, the costs, it all depends.
Right. Yeah, I think one of the things, too, if you're a new company trying to go into a country, you want to possibly do or definitely do a country risk analysis, which we call a PESTI, where we can look at the political factors, the economic factors, the social factors, also the environmental factors as well, as long as the technological factors also. And then, determining what those factors are, we can also look at the different types like you mentioned.
It is important to make sure that you have a strategic flexibility in place. Basically, your time horizon that you want to be. Perhaps the success is not going to be overnight, and those are factors that you need to take into consideration.
If you're comfortable with the country, you probably want to keep more control if you've got the money to spend, and you would probably want a subsidiary. You get more customer feedback.
Sure.
It's yours versus a distribution network. But you may consider distribution instead if you don't know the country. If you're not familiar with the people, you don't have the contacts, the connections. Just keep in mind that if you're doing this, you don't want to switch from one to another. Because if you've started a distribution network and all of a sudden you say, hey, I think I'm going to do a subsidiary, you may end up with a competitor. Somebody you've already trained, somebody who already knows your product.
And that's a very, very good point. From the strategic aspect that you're going to form, what type of institution you will go in. And I will make it a little analogy that is the dating analogy if you're going overseas. If you're going to be a bachelor, you're going to be in a subsidiary, basically. You're going to be a sub there. But if you go into a joint venture, then you're planning to marry somebody there because you're in the long haul.
You may need a joint venture in certain countries. Certain countries and certain industries that the government will tell you can't come in here without, having a partner, a local partner.
Yeah, a lot of the relationships are already built in with the distribution centers, and I think could possibly be a good way to go right off the bat.
Right,
with a lot of companies.
And in picking, the second point is if you're going to go that route and you're going to be doing that, it's great because you've got the marketing, you've got the production all together, you've got a joint venture. Make sure you know your partner. Make sure you pick them very carefully. I've in the past had experiences with clients where they pick them out of the phone book. You don't want to do something like that. If you're going to go overseas, you want to spend the time, you want to spend the money to do it right. Once you're in, as Luis said, once you're married, it's very difficult to get out.
And that's the point that we want to put across. Make sure that you do your due diligence overseas and also in the local markets that you're going to go with, because it's a function of the responsiveness that you're going to have there, i.e. a product or services. You can be selling chiclets or you can be providing internet advice. Exactly. So you need to make sure what is the level of responsiveness that you're going to get there in that market.
Could you give me an example of a product you'd want to market globally rather than regionally? There's a lot of talk about, well, you have to pick the right region for the right products. What sort of product could you just shoot out there globally?
Okay, well, that's a really good point. What you're talking about is going into the types of international marketing. Now, there are different types. There's 4 types of international marketing. Everybody talks about global. Well, you have global, you have regional, you have multi-domestic, and you also have the new one, which is called local.
Right, which is the hardest to reach, actually.
Exactly. And depending on your product, you know, a company may use different approaches for different products. Mm-hmm. A product that would go with one approach to all international markets would be, which would be a standardized product, would be something like a Legos. You may just change the packaging. It may be, you know, in Spanish or in French, but your product is one. Now, not all products are like that. Not some products actually depends on the customer, and it depends on your own product.
Well, the integration, I mean, as far as like getting those products to that market, you're going to have to look at the basic marketing principles as far as the 4 Ps, whether it's price, promotion, people. You want to help me out with that a little bit again?
Price, promotion,
placement, and
placement. Okay,
right.
You take your 4 Ps, and what you want to do is you want to utilize them and mix them up and use them in a way so that the people are going to respond to those 4 Ps. So the marketing principles, whether you do it here domestically or internationally, is not going to be any different. It's just going to be the way you move them around to get that responsiveness to create that integration.
And you want to make sure that they dance.
Exactly.
If they don't dance together, you're not going to be successful.
Absolutely. And going to the point, Jeffrey, that you were mentioned.
I can't dance.
We'll help you.
Another point that she mentioned. You look into the luxury goods. There are the same products wherever you go.
The Gucci.
The Gucci's, the Louis Vuittons, they're the same. However, the packaging is different.
Well, the packaging may be different, but does that also make your profit margin different since you're having to put all this investment into going out globally, which means now that product, does it end up being more expensive in these other markets?
Absolutely, and you have a great point, and that's what I was mentioning, is that's what is called the marketing factors and the financial factors that you need to take into consideration, because remember, when you're going overseas, you're going to receive a different currency. So how are you going to make that currency your local currency? You need to take that into consideration. What are the pricing aspects of it, and so forth?
Let's talk about international pricing, but first, let's go ahead and take our first break. We'll come back with Dr. Adriana Sanford, Hugh Wolf, and Luis Rodriguez. This is Beyond the Curve. I'm Jeffrey O'Brien. We'll be right back after this.
You're listening to NBC 1260.